we follow the story of a man named Ray Lazarus. It is late at night, and Ray is standing on the rooftop of a tall building when a group of armed men shoots him. He is only wearing a mask and a black bodysuit, but even with how many bullets hit him, Ray is not even grazed, and he does not even flinch. It turns out that 3 days ago his life ended, but he was revived with supernatural abilities. The story is set in Paradise City, a place overrun by crime and poverty. It is ruled by an oppressive organization that inflicts pain and fear upon the weak, and when Ray resisted them, they took his life. 3 days ago, Ray's battered body was lying on the pavement. The fire department were the first ones to arrive at the crime scene. A firefighter immediately checked his body and found that he was barely alive. She and another man hauled him into a stretcher and drove off. The woman was surprised when his body started convulsing. When she checked his pulse again, he was gone. The 2 firefighters were already in dread when suddenly, Ray sat up from the stretcher. The woman was stunned in disbelief, but did her best to explain to him what happened. And with that, he got out of the ambulance. We see a glimpse of the organization and its leader, who calls himself Testament. A member was begging him for another chance after he messed up the task they required him to do, but to no avail. Testament clicked his gun and shot the man in the head. The group tasked to eliminate Ray arrived and informed their leader that it was done. Ray struggled to find his way around the city as he was still weak from all the gunshot wounds he took. Meanwhile, Ember was having a shady transaction with a group of men. They double-crossed her and started ganging up, but she swiftly evaded them. The men were stunned momentarily, but soon started chasing her. They caught up with her in an open area. Ray appeared and warned them not to harm her. They ignored him and started a fight. The next thing Ray knew, he was lying on a couch with his bullet wounds patched up. He removed his bandages and found that all his wounds healed up and did not even leave any scars. Ember helped him after he eliminated the 3 men chasing her and brought him to her place. He remembers fighting 3 men as he started showing incredible strength and superhuman capabilities. After they were all down, his energy got drained and he fell to the ground. Suddenly, a man appeared in the living room and introduced himself as the one who revived Ray and gave him his superhuman power. This man is Hellborn. He explained how his ability works. Ray lives off other people's life forces, like the 3 people he recently finished. He can absorb their skills, memory, knowledge, and their whole life force. He can utilize it to heal himself in an instant and make himself stronger. He must use these powers to eradicate evil. Testament visited his chronically ill sister, assuring her that they can find a cure for her. She tells him that they just have to accept her situation, but he refused and insisted. Ray went back to his apartment and found it in a mess. The organization made his accident seem like a robbery. Hellborn appeared to him again. He said that Ray was not the only one who experienced this cruelty and oppression at the hands of the evil organization. It is his purpose to stop them. Ray utilized the memory he got from the men he ended that night to locate the organization's hideout. Their headquarters is an abandoned warehouse, where they manufacture synthetic. Ray made up his mind to shut this warehouse down. He changed his ruined clothes into a dark combat suit to hide his identity. The organization already thought that he was gone. Therefore, he had an advantage over them. Ray rode his motorcycle and headed for the warehouse. He entered the warehouse and found it bustling with activity. There were more than a dozen men working, who were dumbfounded when they saw a man in a full-body suit enter the warehouse, unannounced. When they got back to their senses, they started attacking him. When their leader saw that Ray was overpowering all of his men, he went into the office to take all the money they made and got away with his car. Testament was enjoying his dinner when one of his men informed him of what happened in their warehouse. They reviewed the CCTV footage inside the warehouse and saw that it was Ray when he removed his mask. Testament was in disbelief. He was too bewildered to react and could only order his men to find out what was happening. The next day, Ray visited his friend Pogo to get information for him. He found out that a man called Poet was in charge of the organization's transaction, but he was not their leader. Pogo warned him not to mess with the organization, as it will just attract danger toward him. Ray told him that it was best if he did not know what he was up to, and reassured him before he left. Testament confided his bewilderment at Ray's return in a fortune teller named Nina. She read his fortune, telling him that the man was chosen to be brought back to life because, despite his broken body, his soul was strong. Testament still could not understand how that was possible. Nina explained that there is an ancient power that bestowed it upon Ray, and how this power could continue living by absorbing other people's energies. Testament wanted to know if this power could be taken away. She told him that he needed to break his spirit in order to take his power. Ember was hurriedly packing her things when Ray suddenly appeared inside her apartment. She was initially irritated with him for not giving her any explanation, and just disappearing on her after she helped him. Ray tried his best to explain himself, and asked for her help to tell him what she knew about the head of the organization. Ember was formerly working under Poet, but he knew that there is someone higher than him, controlling the strings. Finally, Ember conceded, and told him what she knew. Anyway, she did not care anymore, since she believed that she was already out of the organization, and was planning to go as far away as possible from Paradise City. All of a sudden, her apartment was attacked by the Testament's men. Lazarus fought them easily and absorbed their life forces. Ember saw his powers firsthand and could not believe how fast he healed the bullet wounds he took. Meanwhile, Testament was talking with his partner about the arrangements to subdue Ray. She informed him that she already got a person to do the job and he will get what he wanted in no time. Ray brought Ember to Pogo's place. He convinced him to let them stay there for a while. Pogo would not let them stay unless Ray told him what really was going on. Ray told him what happened to him and what started it. He was approached by some men from the organization trying to recruit him. When he refused the offer, they tried to put him down. Pogo was not buying it, thinking that it was impossible. Ray demonstrated his super healing ability by cutting the palm of his hand and healing it back in an instant. Pogo was in disbelief, but ultimately he agreed. Ray met with his friend Mike, who went to the lengths of finding Poet and his crew's hideout and beating them up. His sister was a victim of the synthetics, so he made it his personal mission to end their organization. Ray told him about the Testament and the hierarchy of their organization. He invited him to Pogo's place so they could have the privacy and security to talk things through. A man named Benjamin headed to the prison to talk to an inmate. He was an investigator interested with Testament and his organization. The criminal was said to be notorious and violent. However, when Benjamin talked to him, he answered his questions blatantly and calmly, claiming that he did not know that much about Testament. Benjamin tried to crack his shell, telling him what he already knew about the man. He knew that the man was interested in Testament's synthetic, and that he did what he did because he was under the effects of it, leading to his arrest. The man still denied it, and this made Benjamin snap. He knew that the man was lying, just through his unconscious behavior. He threatened the man to send him to a mental institution rather than back home, and the man finally agreed to cooperate. Mike arrived at Pogo's place earlier than Ray. The two of them headed inside, and Pogo was delighted to see Mike, partly because of the beer Ray brought for him. After the catch-up, Mike looked for a car to borrow, with Pogo's approval, as Pogo brought Ray to show him a special suit he created. It was supposed to be for himself, after a racing accident that almost took his life. It was intended to be indestructible. Although he could not fight with Ray, it was the best he could do to protect his friend. Ray was astonished by how incredible it was, and was even more surprised when Pogo handed him the keys to a motorcycle. The Testament was back at his safe house, talking to his sister. She felt hopeless as usual, and tried to walk around her room with what strength she had, so she could feel somewhat alive. With the new information he got about Ray and his power, Testament assured his sister that he finally found a cure for her. She just had to wait for a little while longer. His sister was already not hopeful, knowing that any doctor she saw said the same thing, and that she was incurable. Nevertheless, she told him that she believed that he could save her, just to reassure him. Back at Pogo's, Ray was having a light conversation with Ember. He assured her that he would protect her the way he protected his friends, because they are a family. Their conversation was heading toward a slightly romantic turn, and they were both delighted by it. Mike walked in on them, and brought some of his friends to help them on their mission to bring down Testament. The group started planning how they will go on with the raid and headed out. Benjamin had tracked down a man from the organization inside a hotel room. By the time he and his companion got there, the man was long gone, and his body was already infested with maggots. He and his partner looked around his room and found all the information they needed about the organization, from contacts to locations. Benjamin instructed his partner not to let the authorities know about it just yet, because he wanted to handle the case on his own. Back in the present, Ray arrives at the location and instantly brings down a lookout in a car. His friends are across the street, waiting for him to give a signal. Ray makes his way up to the rooftop, where he gets surrounded by a group of armed men, pointing their guns at him. They start shooting him nonstop, but the bullets do not penetrate his suit. Meanwhile, his friends run inside to help him. In an instant, it becomes an all-out brawl, and the men from the organization start falling one by one. After they take everyone down, they pay respects to one of their friends who fell in the process. Testament sends out his best fighter, Ivan, to find Ray. He heads out and finds Ember. He threatens to harm her if she does not say where they are. Benjamin's partner is able to get a hold of Testament and interrogates him about the synth manufacturing. He admits that he owns several manufacturing plants in the city, but none of them are drug-related. Having no grounds for detention, Testament is able to walk away freely. Ivan reaches the warehouse that Ray and his group recently raided. He takes down a man they put on lookout duty and enters the building. He fights with another man he sees alone inside. The man fights him well, but in the end Ivan is able to subdue and end him. Meanwhile, Benjamin is informed about what happened to his partner's encounter with Testament over the phone. After they're done, a woman enters the office and informs him about a massacre in an abandoned warehouse. Back at the warehouse, Ivan fights Rico, who is no match for him, and soon, he finishes him as well. Ray heads out to hunt down other members of the organization. He leaves the money they gathered from the organization in his care, to use it to help out people in need. Poet meets with Testament, and he is not happy with their current situation. Ray and his friends ruin their plans and stop the synthetic drug manufacturing for the time being. They threaten each other, but ultimately Poet cut ties with him to save himself. Mike sees all the name tags of the people Ivan assassinated, and he immediately fights him. He starts gaining an advantage on him, but Ivan overpowers him and leaves him struggling on the ground. Ray finds him taking his last breath as he tells him his last words. Ray is devastated and furious. He heads out to track the man who did this to Mike and the rest of his friends. He finds him in another abandoned warehouse. He swears that he will make him pay and overpowers him immediately. Suddenly, Ivan reveals that he already possesses the same power as Ray and turns the fight in his favor. Ray fights him with all his might and is able to put him down. He finally knows where the headquarters of the organization is after he absorbs Ivan's life force. He leaves him in the warehouse and heads to the location, where he finds Testament. There are more than 24 men, but he is able to fight them all, getting stronger each time he is able to bring one down. Testament witnesses his show of power and heads for his car. Ray follows, chasing after him. By this time, anyone who tries to get in his way is defeated in an instant without him even touching them. Testament fights him using electric knuckles and unbelievably subdues him for some moments, making him struggle. Ray is able to pull himself together and fight back. When he starts absorbing Testament's life force, he finds out about his tragic past and about his desire to cure his sister. He lets him go in an instant, and Hellborn appears before him. It turns out that he is the one who wanted Ray to lose his life, to give him the power and bring balance to the world. He urges him to finish the job, but Ray refuses and leaves Testament alive. Benjamin finds Ray out and arrests him, but knowing that his intentions are for justice, he gives him a chance to escape for a while.